Greetings, winter is almost over, hallelujah. In celebration of this, I'm going to dedicate this video to Hagrid's tale. And no, there's no connection between Hagrid and winter ending, but I didn't know how else to segue, so yeah. I'm not referring to him actually having a little piggy's tail, I am referring of course to Hagrid's journey in the first term of the Order of the Phoenix year. In the book, we are treated to a full chapter called Hagrid's Tale, where we learn about his travels. If you've only watched the films, you'll be vaguely aware that Hagrid wasn't there in the first half of the Order of the Phoenix film. To be honest, you'd be forgiven for not realising. They didn't really make a big thing of him not being there in the film. Dumbledore does mention that Hagrid isn't there at the start of the year feast, as if it needed mentioning. And I don't think his name is mentioned again until he returns to Hogwarts about halfway through the film, where he explains that he's been away trying to get giants to join them in the fight against Voldemort. But the real story from the books is way better, as per usual. Yet another example of the film missing out quality content. Right, so let's zoom back to the end of the previous book when Voldemort returns to his full body and power in the graveyard. When he comes back, he makes a homecoming speech. I wonder if he pre-wrote that speech, by the way, or got Wormtail to write it for him. Imagine Voldemort getting really nervous about his little speech. Anyway, so, when he makes his speech, he mentions that he wants the giants to join him and the Death Eaters as they all go on the rampage together. Dumbledore is obviously thinking along the same lines because when Harry gets back to Hogwarts later that night, Dumbledore mentions that he wants to see Hagrid and Madame Maxime straight away in his office. Now, we learn in Hagrid's tale that Dumbledore at this point asked Hagrid and Madame Maxime to go on a mission together to find some giants. Standard thing for your boss to ask you to do, really, isn't it? I'm guessing that he chose those two because they're representatives of the half-giant community. Now, skip forward to the beginning of the 5th year when Harry, Ron and Hermione arrive at Hogwarts. They notice straight away that Hagrid isn't there because he's usually waiting on the platform to take the first years across the lake to the castle, while the rest of the students take the carriages. Instead, Professor Grubbly Plank is there, who, if you didn't know, is Hagrid's stand-in. Harry, Ron and Hermione don't know where he is. They didn't know about his secret mission, and they ask Sirius if he knows where Hagrid is, who says that he was doing a special mission for Dumbledore over the summer, but he hasn't returned and no one knows where he is. Umbridge is also chomping at the bit trying to find out where he's gone, and is pecking everyone's head asking where Hagrid is. Hagrid finally appears before Christmas, probably like early December time. In the film, for some reason, they moved it and had him return in like spring. I don't know why, but Hagrid comes back and Harry, Ron and Hermione go and see him and they get the full story. So, Hagrid and Madame Maxime set off on their little trip at the beginning of the summer holidays before the 5th year begins. Dumbledore had told them roughly where they needed to go to find the giants. It was in the mountains somewhere in Europe. Now, it isn't really specified where, but Hagrid says it took about a month to get there and mentions that they went through France, Poland and Belarus. So I reckon the mountains were somewhere in Eastern Europe or perhaps Russia. Anyway, so they got there and they found the giants. Apparently there were like 70 or 80 of them just lying in the mountains, most of them 20 to 25 feet apparently, which is nuts. Hagrid in the film is probably like 8 feet tall. So imagine 3 Hagrids on top of each other, and that's the size of these giants. When Hagrid and Madame Maxime get there, apparently all the giants were sleeping, but Hagrid and Madame Maxime didn't sleep because the giant snoring was so bad that it was causing an avalanche. Fair. My snoring does that sometimes as well. So, come morning, they went to visit the Gurg. Now, the Gurg is like the giant tribe leader. He was a giant called Carcass, who's the laziest, the biggest, and the ugliest giant. According to Hagrid anyway. I would never judge giants like that. I wonder if there's any pretty giants. Anyway, so, they go to visit Carcass, who was lying in a valley between 2 mountains, and was surrounded by dead goats and was being brought food by all the other giants. What a life. So, Hagrid and Madame Maxime go down to see him and they bring gifts with them. Dumbledore had apparently told them that the best way to sweeten the giants up was to give them magical gifts, which is definitely useful to know if you're ever tempted to go to a giant camp. So So they gave him a branch of Gilbrathian fire, which Dumbledore had given to them. Gilbrathian fire is basically fire that lasts forever. So they go back the next day with another gift, a goblin-made battle helmet. Who doesn't want a goblin-made battle helmet? I'm going to ask for one for Christmas. So they give him the gift and they start telling him about Dumbledore's message, which I guess is that they should come and join Dumbledore in the fight against Voldemort because Voldemort's evil. I'm not really sure how much that was going to resonate with murderous giants, to be completely honest. Also, if they did go to Hogwarts, where were they supposed to hang out? In the Great Hall? But anyway, it didn't matter because sadly that night a massive fight between the giants broke out and their best mate Carcass got overthrown. They wake up to find Carcass's head lying at the bottom of a lake. Poor Carcass. I hope they paid tribute to him at the funeral. Anyway, so now that Carcass has been killed, there was a new Gurg in town, a giant called Golgamath. Hagrid and Madame Maxime went to see Golgamath that morning and tried to give him the gift that they were going to give to Carcass, but he wasn't having any of it. And the second Hagrid and Madame Maxime started speaking to him, Golgamath's mates picked them up by their feet and started dangling them upside down and roaring at them. Madame Maxime whips out her wand and fires some fancy spells at the giants, which makes them drop her and Hagrid. Then they leg it and go and hide in a nearby cave. Which, to be honest, is brave. If it were me that had happened to, I wouldn't have gone to a nearby cave, I would have legged it all the way back to Hogwarts. Anyway, so they stick around and see that at night, Golgamath was visited by 2 Death Eaters, who were also bringing him gifts. Unfortunately, they seemed to be quite pally with Golgamath and his crew, and they weren't getting dangled upside down by their feet. So, all in all, at this point, it wasn't really going too well for Hagrid and Madame Maxime. But they don't give up. It takes more than some giant trying to kill them to deter them from their mission. So, they spend their evenings creeping around the outskirts of the camp, trying to convince some of the giants that aren't mates with Golgamath to join them. It's going fairly well, and they seem to have got a few of them convinced after a few days, and they're spreading Dumbledore's message. Just when it seems like Hagrid is going to be sailing back to Hogwarts with a bunch of giants on a P&O cruise, it all goes wrong again. Golgamath and his gang find the giants who had been speaking to Hagrid and Madame Maxime and beat the living daylights out of them. They're not too keen on chatting with old Hagrid after that. Realising that their luck has finally run out, Madame Maxime and Hagrid now say farewell to the giant camp and head home. So that's the end of Hagrid and Madame Maxime's little honeymoon. Now, let's say at this point, when they leave, I reckon it's probably like mid-August. So Hagrid's got 2 weeks to get back to Hogwarts for the start of term. Shouldn't be too difficult, right? You've got to get from like Eastern Europe, Russia to Scotland in 2 weeks. I reckon that should be doable. However, it ends up taking Hagrid 3.5 months to get home. Bloody hell, Hagrid, what was he doing all that time? Now, he does explain later on that the reason it took him so long to get back was because of his half-brother from the same mother, Grob, who he was travelling with, which apparently was why Madame Maxime ditched him on the way back. I mean, fair. Smuggling a giant across the European continent would have probably taken a bit of time. But I mean, like, really? Could they not have just used a portkey or like a magic carpet or something? Surely there was a quicker way for them to get back. Also, let's think. Dumbledore's whole plan was for Hagrid to convince a bunch of giants to come and join them in their fight against Voldemort. How was he expecting to get them all to Hogwarts to join them? Would it have taken the giants 3.5 months to get there as well? Because that's not really that helpful if there's a battle. Like, Voldemort is attacking, quick, call the giants. Oh wait, it's going to take them half a year to get here, never mind. Anyway, yeah, so I love this story of Hagrid's journey, and I think it would be excellent to see it in the HBO series. They could dedicate like a full episode to his little trip, and I would be fully here for it. We don't generally get to see much of the magical world in the films, apart from Hogwarts, Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley, so any chance to explore it would be amazing. It's mentioned briefly in the book that on their way to the giants, Hagrid had a little run-in with a vampire in Belarus and some beef with some Polish trolls. The HBO writers could even riff with this a bit and show us a bit of the journey on the way to see the giants. Anything. Anyway, let's reconvene in 7 years when season 5 of the HBO series comes out. Can't wait. That's the end of Hagrid's tale. Who doesn't love a cosy little evening in Hagrid's hut around the fire, listening to Hagrid tell stories and breaking your teeth on his rock cakes? If you enjoyed this video, drop it a like and subscribe to the channel for more.